You're listening to the Who is Christine Anyway podcast season 2. Today's guest is musician, author, and actor Justin Pearson. Enjoy. But it's always kind of really funny to, like, especially with people who are like, when did you become such a good cook? And I'm like, when I was poor. Like,
you have to be creative about it.
Yeah, you do. And like, same thing. I was talking to somebody, like, I will separate glitter before I eat mustard. I don't know why. But my grandmother was like I said, very staunch Catholic. So she was like, we'd go to cookouts and she'd like, you have to have one of everything. And I'm like, oh God. And I hate deviled eggs.
Ugh.
Just something about it. Like, who the fuck opened their fridge one day and was like, mayonnaise, mustard, eggs? And I'm like, oh, gross. And like mixed them all together, put it together and said, this is a picnic treat. This is disgusting. So yeah. I just won't touch them. And then at the same time, though, I'll eat like Miracle Whip on white bread, but only on white bread. And it's like just a random, like in the middle of summer, I'll be like, this is perfect now. Like, ask me in February. And I'm like, no, I'm not feeling Miracle Whip.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's in it. I think it's probably one molecule away from plastic, like margarine, but.
Yeah.
Questionable choices, but I think that being poor has its benefits. It's kind of one of those things where, like the dog grooming license plate thing. Do you think somebody who, if you had millions of dollars in the bank, do you think the first thing they would have said is, let's get a decoy license plate cover? They would have probably thought, no, let's tint it out, get an alarm system, get all kinds of shit, hire a guard, do all this stuff. And it's like these little simple fixes. It's really not that hard.
You have different skill sets and different survival techniques. It is interesting because I think that's why like people that are wealthy tend to be less empathetic. And I think when you're less empathetic, you have probably a sadder life, So it is interesting. So does wealth bring happiness? I mean, maybe to some people, maybe to someone that can appreciate the wealth, but when you don't appreciate it and you take it for granted, I think you're probably worse off than anybody else.
I read a study years ago, and it was interesting because it was based on that exactly. Does wealth make people happy? And it said that the average person, in order to actually be fulfilled, meaning whatever, would only require about $70,000 a year. Anything beyond that, your house you really don't need those extra spare bedrooms. You really don't need to eat, steak all these other weird times. Like that's what this amount for one vacation a year. This, of course, now we have inflation and all this stuff. But I always thought it was interesting that they were able to assign a value to it at $70,000. And then everybody's always striving for more, which should, don't get me wrong, we should always continue to keep striving and learning. But at the same time, like, are you happy enough sitting on a Sunday with your like, fuck, I got nothing to do, no money, no this, no that. How can I be creative? Like, okay, I've got like 3 pieces of, I don't know, whole wheat seed bread and a little bit of this and a toaster oven. What can I do? And I mean, some of their favorite foods and stuff, some of their favorite art, some of their favorite stuff, like, is done that way. Like a kid with a Chromebook may not have extra money, but he could be sitting there writing a masterpiece, a tactical masterpiece, just by using his brain and his experiences. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Maybe the rich is that lacking that empathy because of that. Because if you remove those people who do have those skill sets, and there's quite a few of them from multiple cultures everywhere. I had a huge culture shock when I started traveling because up here, there's not much real deep, thorough, thick culture. So when I started like going out to, California, Florida, all these other places, and it was so diverse. First of all, it was humiliating, utterly humiliating to go into these places and admit that I fucking knew nothing. But that was humbling. It's like, yeah, no, okay, cool. I don't have all the answers. So I need to do the whole 2 ears, 1 mouth situation. You need to listen twice as much as you talk. Mm. And so when I started doing that sort of stuff, I started realizing how lucky I was to be impoverished as a young adult and as a child. Like at 14, I was out having to get a job. If I didn't have to go out and get it, like, my home life was rough. I was getting my ass kicked too. And it was just a fucking nightmare. So I went to the venues. I'm like, I can do this. I can make something of this. And of course, now as time's gone on, like some of those relatives went back and all like, they did it because of me. And I'm like, careful, don't say that too fucking loud. You realize it wasn't a great story to get there. Like, you were a shit. I had to work at 14. And then at the same time, there's these amazing stories where I would like pick up these waitressing jobs, or like I remember working for like the first band that I had worked for that was relatively big that could pay me a pretty good wage. I was working at Sears selling fucking appliances. So I'd be like, click, 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 click. Yeah, so much ice. Click, 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 click. Like, yeah, total freezer. And like, I'm selling these appliances, going home, making dinner, and then working until 4 a.m, marketing these ads. And I'm doing these marketing campaigns. And everyone's like, well, somebody who does what you do must, do this. I'm like, you don't just fall into this.
Yeah.
You have to work your ass up into it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't have the skill set that I had growing up, which, I guess my grandmother being staunchly Catholic taught me temperance. Probably not so much for my brother, but temperance. And then, being forced, into the music scene. And it actually was so enveloping and welcoming. And that was something that people, when I tell people, like, no, the punk scene was incredibly welcoming, incredibly warm. I've never once had anybody, roofie me. I've never once had any inappropriate advances in a way. I've never been thrown over a shoulder and carried out, which is really kind of disappointing now. I'm like, wow. But it's kind of like, I've never had these experiences. Like, my clients are always so decent. Like, they're just normal people. They're like, hey, that's like our really weird sister over there. And I'm like, not exactly how you want to be looked at. But at the same time, it's also, people are kind of shocked. And I'm like, well, I had to put protocols in place, which is something that's crazy as a woman in music to have to do. Like, I can't get on a bus alone without a security guard or a chaperone. Not because of anything other than understanding PR. Like, if I got on the bus alone with an artist, and then him and I get off the bus, or her and I, whoever, tongues wag, people wag. Well, she was on the bus. So you get guns sent. But if you got on the bus with someone, it's not going to wag about you so much.
First.
So it's, same thing. Like, I have to have, I have my own green room. My kids, like, when they'll work shows with me and stuff. And my 15-year-old was my assistant all summer. And she had her own security detail. She had a friend with her, so I didn't want her to be alone, and she had to have her own security detail. What the fuck? But at the same time, like, at least knowing that these preventative measures are in place. And I think I've been really lucky with having like a lot of males and females that are like above me. Cause I do know I'm 37. I mean, I know I'm young. And especially having 23 years in this, I get that for 23 years and being 37, having 4 kids, like it's something should have fucking happened, but it never did because I had a lot of really great people along the way that were just kind of like, hey, that's just not cool. Or myself knowing where my limits are. And it's cost me opportunities before. We'll come over here and we'll talk. No.
Yeah. Well, your knowledge gives you foresight as well. So you are able to avoid casualties, I suppose.
It's wild. Yeah. It can really be wild. And I can't imagine and the thing is like, I'm talking about like how, overly regarded a woman is getting on a bus, but we're not going to talk about the disregard of a guy getting on a bus and having something happen to him. Like, why does that never come into focus for people?
It should be a topic, but it also is like, I mean, we are in a patriarchal society, so it makes sense why that would be the go-to thought process. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. There's a lot to, I think, people's social. I don't know what the right word is, like not considerations, but like how you perceive things. Even like I've been on tour with, I don't want to name anyone. Yeah, I was on tour with a pretty high profile person, and who was a man, and this woman that was a friend of another bandmate's was like, can I get a ride with you to the hotel to go there to see, and he's like,
right.
He's like, I can't leave with you. And she was like, why? He's like, I can't have anybody see you and me getting in this golf cart and going to the, he's like, no offense, but I just can't do that because it could look bad.
Yeah. From a PR spec, it's crazy. And I think about the significant others in the industry too. And a lot of people are like, well, rock star life and this and everything. And it does exist. Don't get me wrong. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is like, at some point, some people do find their person. Some people do find this. And like, I couldn't imagine being in a marital situation and like whipping open TMZ, like if you're at a huge level and they're like, look, you were running off with her. And it's like, well, honestly, it was just a golf cart. And I was just getting from one end of the festival to the other. And nothing happened. How do you even prove or disprove that, especially when all these perfect camera angles? So it's like you almost have to behave like there's always cameras on you. And that, sometimes that costs people job opportunities, which is crazy. I think if I didn't have to turn down some of the job opportunities that have crossed my desk, I would probably be at a different place in the industry. But at the same time, turning down some of the positions I have been, I guess, passed over for because I refused to cross a certain boundary has really kind of like, maybe I needed to close that window so the fucking door opens. Instead of closing doors so windows open, maybe it's close that fucking window. So it's like such an easy out. Like, I don't want the easy. I want to get where I am because of the hard thing. And it was, I've walked away from things where I'm a sassy pants in the worst way. That's putting it so nicely. Like where, people, that political arena, coming out of that political arena and having done that, event in that town. And, I actually had a conversation with somebody regarding that, the plaque that I was, harboring. And they go, well, you haven't earned it. And I pulled up the qualifications. And I read the qualifications and I read the other names on it. And I realized about halfway through that list, I'm like, wow, I am really allowing something to get into an internal side of me that I didn't like. I didn't like that. I didn't like that side of myself because now I'm like, why do I feel entitled to this? Is it because I have moved up and I am not? It's almost like, did I forget my poverty privilege? You're lucky you even have a fucking job. So checking myself back down into that position. And then kind of going, okay, what walls you can't get through, you have to go around. Okay, so I don't get on the bus without a chaperone or whatever. We find another way to make it work. That's just kind of, it's actually led me to have to be more creative in that sense, in the business sense. And
yeah, also I think the bigger picture would be like capitalism, because capitalism is what keeps all these social structures in place. So like without capitalism, we could essentially eliminate sexism, or patriarchy, like because you have these bosses trying to be oppressive towards, I guess, other people, typically male to female, and that I think if we could eliminate elements of capitalism or maybe make capitalism ethical, that might be a shift. But I really do think that capitalism is like probably the root problem for like racism, sexism, homophobia.
The crazy too. How women will run with it because I don't want to say my gender knows they can get away with it. That sounds horrible. But a lot of the people that I have seen that have run away with it, they're like, well, nobody's going to check the chick. Nobody's going to put the chick in check. Nobody's going to say that. Like, well, she has money. He says, okay. Well, she's worked hard. She must have worked hard to get what she has, to get where she is. So it's okay. And I'm like, it's not okay on any platform. That is still that's still a human. I'm a humanist. So I live like right in that humanism, platform. I'm like, I love listening to the people about their religions. I think it's amazing to listen to what they believe. I don't have to subscribe to it. I think they can listen to it, subscribe, and chill. And I think it's awesome. I'm not going to try to convert anybody. At the same time, I will challenge them with the most grotesque questions that will offend them. And then, they'll either engage in the intellectual conversation or they'll leave. But with women, I can get away with that. Like if you turned around and you asked somebody a grotesque religious question per se to somebody who of a higher financial standing, you could be crushed very quickly. Like they're like, we don't want him anymore. We're going to unsign him, remove him, cancel him, whatever it is. Whereas they would just be like, oh, silly girl. She must have got away from the kitchen. It's kind of that capitalism you talk about. It's like, it's okay. We can just demote her to secretary. And like,
yeah, of course.
Keep listening for more of my conversation with Justin. Visit www.whoischristineanyway.com for access to all the social media links and additional podcast episodes.